Welcome back to TMZ Live. So Kamala Harris has now picked her running mate, and it is Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. I am surprised/shocked that she did not pick Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania.
Me too. He was the favorite. If you looked at the betting odds, to people saying he's the popular governor of a swing state.
Odds schmods.
But he's the popular governor of a swing state,
Yeah.
bottom line, right?
There are all sorts of reasons
Yeah.
why I thought she was going to pick Josh Shapiro.
Seemed to make sense.
Let's bring in a guy who knows politics as well as anybody I know. And that is Elex Michaelson, who is the anchor of Fox 11. The Issue Is, which is a political show that runs through California and just knows everything about politics. Elex, welcome back to TMZ Live.
Well, apparently I don't know everything, because when I was co-hosting this show with you last week, we both thought that the pick was going to be Josh Shapiro, but apparently the betting odds were wrong on this one, and ultimately she chose Tim Walz.
So let me just give you my take. And apparently he's a really good guy, very popular governor. He is going to help her in the Midwest, and that's significant. But everything else aside, to me, Josh Shapiro represents exactly what the Democrats have been talking about, which is we want young, we want fresh, we want smart. And Walz is smart, but he's not young. and Josh Shapiro has that spark. And I thought that's what Democrats were going for. So that shocks me as much as anything. How about you?
Well, Tim Walz is a lot younger than he looks. Do you know that Brad Pitt is actually older than Tim Walz?
No.
He is.
Tim Walz is what? He's 60-ish?
He's 60. He's 60. He's less than a year older than Kamala Harris.
10 years older than Josh Shapiro.
Josh Shapiro, who's 51.
Yeah.
Shapiro looks more like the future. And Tim Walz, though, may be more comfortable to some people. I mean, let's talk about the appeal of Tim Walz and why she probably picked him in the end. I mean, here's a guy who not only is the governor of Minnesota, but had been a Congress member, is the chair of the National Governors Association, leading all of the governors. But in his past, he's a teacher, somebody who went to state college, who enlisted in the military and served for 24 years in the military, somebody who is a hunter, who lived in rural America and knows how to speak and interact with people that, frankly, Kamala Harris hasn't spent a whole lot of time with in her life. Living in Oakland and Canada and Brentwood. Tim Walz represents a different part of America, and they hope a different part of the Democratic coalition.
Elex, there's a thought out there that Kamala Harris might have been concerned about Josh Shapiro's star power, that he could actually outshine her as the VP, and that perhaps went into her decision here. Do you buy into that Josh Shapiro is just that good that she didn't want to be overshadowed?
Well, that was some of what was being thrown out there. John Fetterman, who is the senator from Pennsylvania, who's kind of been a rival with Josh Shapiro for many years, even though they're both Democrats in the state, probably the two most high-profile Democrats, made that argument publicly, that Josh Shapiro is ambitious and he may be more interested in being the top guy on the ticket. Beware of him. And that Kamala Harris, you want somebody who is more loyal to you, who isn't going to outshine you. Then, of course, Republicans are putting forward the fact that he's Jewish, suggesting that Kamala Harris was afraid of pissing off the what they call pro-Hamas wing, some might say the anti-Israel wing, by picking a Jewish man who has spent much of his life advocating for Israel. Kamala Harris would say, look, I'm married to a Jewish guy. I'm not anti-Semitic. But it'll be interesting to hear if and when she talks about why she did this. Kamala Harris has not answered a single question from any reporters about her Democratic nomination since she's been tacked in the last 2 weeks. She hasn't done any press conferences. Will her and Walz be able to talk with reporters over the next week as they travel the country to swing states, starting with Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro's spot where he's going to be talking at the rally in showcasing how important Pennsylvania is as a swing state.
So I don't think anybody legit is even suggesting that Kamala Harris is anti-Semitic, but I think there are people saying that she was kowtowing to the left wing of the Democratic Party. where there is some anti-Semitism. So speaking of that wing of the party, Walz is a progressive Democrat, and Kamala Harris has walked back a number of issues that she kind of embraced, before all of this happened, to come more toward the center. By picking somebody like Walz, does it feel like it's waffling back and forth because she's walked back some of the things that he seems to be embracing?
Essentially is firing up the Democratic base, the progressive base, some of whom maybe had a problem with Shapiro. And so maybe you're getting your people out, but it does not send a message to people that may be more moderate that she's a more moderate candidate. And this is one of the opportunities that she has to define herself. Look, like 70, 80% of the country has no opinion of Tim Walz right now. And there's still big chunks of the country that are trying to figure out who is Kamala Harris. And by making this pick, which ultimately is more important about her than it is about him, because people vote for president, they don't vote for vice president, but it sends a message to people about your priorities. And by picking somebody who's more progressive as compared to somebody who's more centrist, maybe it sends a message to people that you're more focused on progressive values.
Alex, if you were running her campaign, is this the first mistake that Kamala Harris has made, or was this not a mistake?
I think it's too early to tell. But if this race comes down on election night to Pennsylvania and say Kamala Harris loses by 0.5% of Pennsylvania, there'll be a lot of people that'll be looking back at this moment as perhaps a massive mistake when she had an opportunity to change that.
Do you think that the vice presidential pick would have mattered in Pennsylvania if because you had mentioned earlier, which is true, that people vote for president, not for vice president. But would Shapiro have made a difference in Pennsylvania, do you think?
So the statistical analysis of the vice presidential picks in their home states usually shows that it helps the candidate by between 0.5% and 1.5%. So not a huge amount. But if you think about the last election in Pennsylvania, it was like 0.5% difference. So if we're at the margins, that little bit of difference could be the difference between winning Pennsylvania and winning the election and not, which is why when I was on the set with you last week, it seemed so obvious if you have the chance to pick the most popular guy in the most important state that you would pick him. And the fact that she didn't is really stunning.
That's the way I see it, too. Okie doke, you're off to the Democratic Convention, I understand.
I am, and Tim Walz will have a big opportunity to define himself that night, the biggest speech of his life, the Wednesday night of that week, and then Kamala Harris makes her speech the Thursday night of that speech. It'll be interesting to see if this pick impacts how many potential protesters for Israel and Gaza we see outside in Chicago. That may be another reason why they picked Walz over Shapiro.
Although, it's so funny. I thought of that as well. I don't think it's going to have an impact. I think the demonstrators are going to be there because what they're asking for goes beyond, I think, what either of them, because really, Walz and Shapiro have had almost identical views on the war. So I don't know that this even satisfies a lot of the people who planned on protesting. I don't know how you feel about it.
They have had identical views on the war, but Josh Shapiro is Jewish and Tim Walz is not. And Josh Shapiro has been going to Israel and made that a huge part of his life for decades. And you and I both know as Jewish people that some people view that in just a different light.
They do indeed. Elex, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Great to see you guys. Thank you.
Thanks again.